Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the second SprocketShift Project Happy Hour. My name is Tim Mooney. I'm with the Pedal Shift Project. Thank you again so much for joining. I literally just said that. We will soon be joined by the co-hosts and the producer emeritus of the Sprocket podcast, and we will be spending about the next 40 minutes or so together enjoying a fine beverage. We are going to be doing this in a way where you're going to remain muted and you're going to remain keeping your video sort of by the wayside for at least a minute. And the co-hosts for the SprocketShift podcast are going to get together, and we are going to chat about some bikey stuff. Brock Dittis, hello, sir, and welcome to Electric Boogaloo, the second edition.
Hey, Mr. Mooney. And hey, everybody else. Good to see everybody on the call.
All right. And let's see, we should be getting Aaron Flores and Guthrie Straw as well, and hopefully up to 100 of you. This is how it works on this fine platform. We've got... we're using Zoom. It is an experimental situation. I believe we've got Mr. Aaron Flores. I'm going to unmute you, sir. How are you on this fine evening?
I am doing all right. I am going to pop out in just a second to grab a coffee that I'm drinking / making.
Please do.
Let me also test the audio here. Oh boy.
We are trying to record the audio at each of our ends for your listening enjoyment on a future edition of the Sprocket podcast.
Tough.
Good opportunity for me to start off things by saying, what am I drinking? I'm drinking a fine DC beer, DC Brow's The Corruption. No commentary whatsoever with my beer choice whatsoever. It's just a good beer. DC Brow's The Corruption. Mr. Dittis, what is your, hold on, audio. What is your drink of choice? You are muted, so I'm going to unmute you. And hopefully that would work.
There we go. I think I did that by accident. My apologies.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing that I had before, which is fake whiskey. So
fake whiskey. The burn comes from peppercorns, folks.
That's right, yeah.
Hello, sir. How are you? I am attempting to unmute you. Let's see if I can unmute you. We're going to try that. You're off camera, though. In any event, one more time to unmute Guthrie Straw. Maybe he's he doesn't want to be heard. Wait. Oh, maybe you don't have a microphone. And there we go. You're back. Hello, Guthrie. How are you tonight?
Hey, I was just getting my audio settings dialed in. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, you sound like $1 million tonight, sir.
Aw, so do you.
Are you using microphones that are normally used for the production of the Sprocket podcast?
I am, I'm using the microphone that we used primarily in our recording studio in the Airstream. So a good old Shure SM, I think it's a SM57 or a SM58 to talk about the sausage factory.
Sure. See what I did there? Let's see. And Aaron, you've got your coffee
microphone right now. Sorry, I'm talking over you guys.
Aaron, what are you drinking? You got the coffee. Brock,
I've got a coffee with my Swift Summit Northwest mug.
Fantastic.
Shot yet. Also, I want to note, hang on just a second here. Grandpa's got to figure, here I am. Okay. Also, I want to note that I also brought a birthday cake that Anna's mom made for Anna's birthday.
Is Anna present that we can wish her a happy birthday?
She's not.
Oh my goodness.
Of all things, they called her at 4 a.m. to come work a flight.
Okay. Happy birthday. Get on a plane. Wow. We'll just leave it at that. Well,
hey,
happy birthday, Anna, wherever you are.
She's got work, though, you know?
Yeah. Hey.
At least there's that.
Exactly. Happy birthday. Cheers to Anna for her.
Exactly.
For her birthday. I don't know her age. I will not reveal her age. Guthrie Straw, what are you drinking this fine happy hour?
I'm having some lovely water in a bottle, courtesy of Gladys Cycles.
And we shifted the time here, and I'd like to know for the record that this guy's the only one who's actually drinking. I don't understand what's happening.
I've got a little bit of coffee left over because it's going to be that kind of night.
You assholes have beer sponsors. I don't. and I am the only one drinking. I'm just saying.
I picked the wrong year to stop sniffing glue.
That's right.
I'll tell you. Hey, folks, today on the Sprocket Shift Project Happy Hour, we are playing. We're going to try to do a topic every time we do this, and on this particular episode, we've got. I don't know if I've got my timer running on this. Of course, as I mentioned on the last one, we're at a hard cutoff at 40 minutes. So these are nice and tight. This is about one drink's worth of enjoyment. We're going to talk for a few minutes on the topic, and then we're going to invite you to come on in and chat about this topic. Tonight's topic is planning a bicycle ride, whether that's a tour or a day trip. I'm planning one right now. In fact, you can probably see right behind me, I've got my rig. I'm actually giving it a bit of a tune because my intention is, health willing, I'm going to be going out on the C&O starting on Thursday, and I'm going to do close to a 3 ride if I can do it. Conditions willing, we're just going to have to see how it goes. But, what do you do to plan a bicycle tour, a bicycle tour like me, or a day trip, or a fun ride, or a pedal-palooza ride, things like that? Guthrie, I had you first in the show notes. I'm not sure if you knew that, but you are welcome to start or to defer if you would like.
Oh, I'm good. I guess I could talk a little bit about 2 trips that I had planned, but part of planning will now include planning those to be later than they were planned, which I think is the case for a lot of folks. But just as a little bit of background, I put my scenery behind me here because in about 2 weeks I was hoping to be in Japan. And anybody that's been paying attention to the state travel advisories will have seen that everybody's basically getting recalled. So part of that planning on a long range sense is, it's interesting. This is the most in advance I've ever planned a trip. Usually I'm just like, I'm going on a trip, and and I go on a trip. But the advanced planning in this case didn't. Nice, Tim. I like it. We know where Tim's traveling.
Do something.
Yeah, I think with traveling there are kind of multiple levels of consideration. So one of them, of course, is the bicycle component, and I'm sure we'll get into the nitty gritty of what to bring and how, and over what I guess means. But traveling can also involve planning in regards to where you're going or what you're doing, or what does staying somewhere look like to you. And I think we got a little bit into this when we were talking with was it the First Time Bike Touring Club, Tim, or what was the podcast that we chatted on with a fellow who was planning a first time bike trip with some friends a couple of months ago?
That was the beginner series, and we were chatting. Let's see, were we checking with Steve, a comedian's name? Steve Older was on Saturday Night Live as not a cast
Steve
member,
Martin?
but why am I having a complete
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, thank you.
Yeah,
there we go.
Martin. It was not that Steve Martin. It was a different Steve Martin. But yes, sorry, Guthrie, go ahead.
No, that's perfectly fine. So I think traveling also means figuring out what you want to do, where you want to do it, of course, how you're going to do it. But it looks very different for everybody. And so just talking a little bit about my travel process and comfortability. And this is something that I learned quite a bit. There we go. I recognize that. There we go. Yeah, I mean, so when I think about traveling, I think about planning think about planning in regards to what I hope to do, not what I plan to do, because this is something I learned in India, especially when I was biking there with my sister, is you never say like, oh, I'll be here at this time, or I'm going to take this bus to here or this thing to there. You always say, I hope to. And the reason you say you hope to is because it might not actually come to be. And I think that was really, I really enjoyed that when I was traveling, because it is kind of the same mindset that I think I take into all the tour places or places that I go touring. But it was never more so apparent traveling in southern India. And so typically I'll kind of plan a route based on points. I don't really like to fill in the distance in between. And I know we've had several listeners and folks who've written to the Pedal Shift and the Sprocket who talk about the enjoyment that is that planning process. Hey, we're going to make 30 miles here, and then we're going to camp in this spot, and if that doesn't work, then there's a bailout here, and we're going to do this instead, or we have like a hotel or something that we can charge the card on if we absolutely have to, that kind of deal. For me, like when I approach planning, I approach more like, what can I do to my setup? What can I do for myself that will allow me to be as sort of self-sufficient or rely on myself as much as possible? Because I feel like when I get to the pedal moment of things, the plans always change. And so, I can certainly try to make it places and be like, oh, that would be a cool campsite. But as far as my comfortability when traveling by bicycle, I'm just as comfortable camping in a ditch on the side of the road as I am, really trying to make that thing happen. So knowing what kind of traveler you are, I think is almost more important than planning how to travel, because if you know what kind of traveler you are, you can better fit whatever you're doing towards your style to have a happy outcome, even if it looks completely different from somebody else's trip. So I try to be self-sufficient so that I'm not reliant on external factors, or at least not within like a 3 to 5 day period. If it gets out to like 7 days, yeah, you're probably going to need to think about food or water. But having that knowledge that I've got everything I need on my bike opens up a lot of possibilities in how I get from A to B necessarily.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I love the idea of the fact that, things change. With the best laid plans, I don't think I've ever had a single tour or bike trip that I've ever done that has gone from A to B to C to D exactly by plan. This last Florida trip was about as close as it got, but things intervene and stuff like that. So staying flexible, I think, is awesome. Hey, Aaron, how about you?
Yes.
What's your thought process in the whole bikey planning kind of headspace?
Planning. I just do it. I just go out. Most of the time, like on the longer trips I've ever done, I've been fortunate enough that other people have done the bulk of the planning. But anything that I've done where Anna and I, we just went out. We're like, okay, so where are we going? We're going to this campground. All right, I guess I'll just get a map there. I will say the hardest part for me is exactly what Guthrie is talking about like, hey, I hope to be at this place at this time. I am so schedule oriented when it comes to that kind of thing, that it's very difficult. Like if we're taking a break, it's very difficult for me to not think, okay, clock is ticking. We gotta be there by time X, because if I don't do that, then other things that I've planned will start to fall out of place.
So I think you strike me as the non-planner planner, and let life come at you.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I try not to plan, but also in the meantime, I also want to be at very specific places at very specific times.
So kind of an in-betweener. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of how I feel like I am in a certain way too. It's like, although if anybody who listens to my show know that I'm a super structured Virgo dude who's like, yeah, they're like, no, dude, you are not anything but planning. So maybe I should just shut up or something. Yo, Brock, what do you got on regarding planning for a bicycle trip? What's sort of your thing?
The thing that I thought of first was having a good packing list is essential, because I think I probably shared before, like in 2014 when Adele and I didn't even have a permanent address and we just went out and rode bikes for 8 weeks. That was some of the best times that I've had in my life. And largely because it was so spontaneous. We kind of knew where we wanted to go, kind of broadly east and west, but we didn't have to worry about getting the specifics down beforehand. We just said, hey, riding, it's about 5 o'clock. That looks like a good free spot to camp. Let's do that. So that's something that I'm super comfortable with, kind of being relaxed about. At least I was at that time. If you're taking a shorter trip, like a weekend, or you kind of want to make sure you're back in time for your other responsibilities. But one of the things that I thought was really nice is having a packing list, because I have forgotten rubber boots. I've forgotten rain gear. I have forgotten my sleeping bag one time. I had to buy another one at a grocery on the way up. And so you really do want to know what you need and if you have it or not. I think that's the thing where I'm the biggest fan of planning in that regard.
I understand that you also were an over planner at a certain point. Tell me, talk more
Oh
about
yeah.
how you got out of over planning.
Well, I mean, I used to have more time on my hands. I've got like 3 or 4 different tours that I meticulously planned out using Google Maps and using like my calendar function, everything. Like I just didn't take those trips. And there's a certain amount of that that's healthy, and then there's also a certain amount that's not. So I would say I'm no longer planning trips I won't take. That's for sure.
That makes sense. Do not plan things you do not need, right? So for me, in the past years during what I now call off season, or used to call off season, I'm now cycling all 4 seasons because I'll do a winter trip now. I use planning as a tool to um, keep me sharp and to keep me anticipating um, the tours to come. It was sort of like wish casting some tours, and just like filling in that time and just keeping my enthusiasm strong. And that was like a really important thing for me. Now I find that planning does that for me all year round. I enjoy planning a bicycle tour, not as much as doing it, but it really is kind of a fun thing to be able to fill time. And like I said, wish casting, sort of thinking about things. What's a new twist? If I'm going to do a ride that I've already done before, how is it going to be different? That I like doing those types of things. I also like, well, you see DC in the background now, but my bike's actually physically there. So, getting the bike all fixed up and cleaning it up and doing the little bit of like kind of routine maintenance to get it ready for the tour. That's kind of the thing that I like to do. Um, my my near-term planning is everything that can start and end in DC or here at my cabin in West Virginia. I can bike between the two in 2 days and do a round trip in 4. That's sort of the world that I live in right now. And you know what? That seems to be okay. Interestingly, the Rails to Trails folks just put out an email that said, hey, it's all perfectly consistent to go out there and in our current environment, go out and use the trails. It's as long as you do a few things to keep yourself safe and for the safety of others. Hey, getting out and doing a bike tour or getting out on these trails, that's a good thing. And it's good for all of our health and our well-being. So I think that's pretty cool. One thing that I would
Outside
also
is
mention out
free.
there. Yeah. One thing that I would mention also is just from a planning tip, Many Tips, English Tips movie. Who's got that? I like to use Google Street View to do a virtual ride through of any ride that is new to me. And particularly if I'm in some road areas that look a little bit gnarly from the map perspective, sometimes it will confirm, hey, that's gnarly, and maybe there's no good shoulder there, or it's not a good safe way to go, and I'll look for an alternative route. Sometimes what I'll discover is actually, oh no, it looks terrible on the map, but actually in practice, it's pretty good. It's got a big wide shoulder, or it's less traveled road than you would expect. So I think that that's a really helpful thing. Florida, prime example, this last trip that I did in January, using that Google Street View is, I think, a really good way to kind of do things. So we've got some folks in. Does anybody have any kind of thoughts to wrap things up, to work off of anything Brock said or Aaron said? Guthrie?
Yeah. I only had one extra thing to add to the Google Maps, and this is only because it's bitten me once. It's excellent for Street View, but it's good to check when the Street View was last taken. I have encountered that difficulty before.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, it's interesting. I found that they've been cycling through more frequently. It's very rare that I see a place that is several years old, and that's really helpful. The other thing about using Google as your bike touring router, and that's another reason why I like to do the Street View to check on things, is I did a Google bicycle tour, or excuse me, bicycle routing through the Olympic Peninsula, and it took me on, surprise, a logging road, which was not a great idea. I could have stayed on 101 with a great big wide shoulder and not done the elevation gain and fall and the crazy gravel that I was on that was really not gravel. It was like rocks this big around. Audio medium folks, it was like the size of Twinkies, basically. So not super ideal for a fully loaded touring rig, but it worked. It was kind of fun. I talked about that on, God, what would that have been, in episode 5 of the podcast. So Anybody else got any kind of final thoughts before I think we got some folks in the audience if they would be willing to. Let's see, we've got Greg Braithwaite's in there, EJ Finnerans in the house. I think we'll pitch to you all if you're willing to share. But
Those
any
are my
last thing
favorite
from the
people.
Sprocket folks?
Oh,
No?
I think you have to unmute them.
Well, no. Well, I said from you guys first, but now I'm
I'm
gonna.
sorry.
All right, who do we want to hear from first? Let's see.
I want to hear from the
Either
railroad.
Greg or EJ, if you do not want to participate, do this. All right, then you're both coming in. Greg, you're the one who's in my screen right now, so I'm going to unmute you. What do you got what do you do when you're pulling together a bike trip? What's your jam?
First, let me just back it up a little bit and say what a honor and pleasure it is to be here.
It is our pleasure, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for putting this together. What was the question again?
What do you do for bike planning? Whether it's a day trip, a tour, what's sort of your mindset on it? Are you a planning person, non-planning person? What's your deal?
Yeah, in the Tim Mooney vein, I'm a big planner. I get probably second best joy besides the trip itself from planning. I will usually have to set a deadline to myself for when I should not start planning before that date. Otherwise, I would just start planning too much and then get obsessive, and then it's actually not a good thing. So I will be like, okay, I can't start planning the summer trip until November. Yeah, I plan things out. My longest trip has just only been 18 days, and I'll usually kind of create a day by day, agenda. And not that if things went awry, I wouldn't be okay with that, and things have, but I just really enjoy the planning, using Google Maps, obviously, the book and various other resources depending on what trip you're taking.
Gotcha. What type of riding do you like to do? Are you kind of a bike packer, a four-pannier kind of guy? What's your deal?
I've been doing mostly traditional road touring. I actually just built up a brand new bike that I was planning on taking my first trip on soon, but will be postponed. But here in Santa Cruz, where I live, I also do a lot of, I guess what people would call gravel riding. I would assume some of the gravel riding we're doing in Santa Cruz would be closer to mountain bike riding, but I'm doing it on a drop bar gravel bike. So I do that, and then as much commuting as I could do, and trips to the store. So
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just curious, Greg, for your purposes, would you consider a gravel bike a touring bike? Could you do like a overnight / multi-night on a gravel bike?
The bike I just built up, which is a Lynxy titanium frame bike made here in the United States, is one of their gravel models. So it takes a wider tire, and I think when I say traditional road touring, I just kind of mean that one, I'm mostly on roads, but two, I'm still carrying a traditional rear rack with traditional rear bags, and so I kind of feel like the bike itself is universal to that, touring process, but I haven't done a lot of multi-day dirt riding.
Thanks.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Greg. I really appreciate it. And hey, you're right on one of the great bike touring routes of all in Santa Cruz. So maybe get out on that ride. Get out and do a ride, man.
I've been doing a lot of riding the last few days, actually.
Yeah. It's a good way to kind of get the mind off, I think. So yeah. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for participating. Oh, yeah, Brock, go ahead.
Yeah, just Greg, what does it feel like to be an awesome drummer? Because you're a pretty great drummer.
Now that's pandering, people.
Music and bikes are definitely some big passions for me. So thank you, though.
Brock Dittus, Chief Panderer of the SprocketShift Project Happy Hours. Thank you. Thanks again, Greg. Really appreciate you. Hey, EJ, I'm going to unmute you. Looks like you've got some other folks joining you. What's your sitch with
all of the
bikey
Finnerans.
planning stuff?
Hey, Finnerans.
Hello. This is Willa, by the way.
Hey, Willa.
Yeah, we haven't planned a trip since our trip, the one that we were on the Sprocket describing all the follies we went through. But that was fairly well planned out. We had turn by turn, like things printed out and like taped to the handlebars and stuff. Because that was like our first real trip, so I was really paranoid about making sure we didn't get lost. But
well, and when EJ says we, he means he, because he planned everything, and I just went along for the ride.
Yeah,
literally.
Just how we ended up on the side of the road without a wrench.
Yeah, I'll blame him for that.
But yeah, I mean, for the first trip, I was pretty paranoid about, and then we did a second trip, I guess, with Ben. That was a bit more like, I don't know.
Well, and I think because we had already done a bike camping trip, and we had been to Stubb Stewart, and that's where we went with our friend Ben. We were a little less anxious about it. And Ben spent like 6 months or something bike touring around New Zealand. So we're like, it's fine. Nothing's going to happen that we can't handle.
Yeah, exactly.
I see that you guys are actually drinking actual alcoholic beverages. Is that correct? What are in your glasses? Your collected glasses?
This is I believe these Fog-O-Matic hazy IPA or just the New England style IPA, which might be some of them.
Same thing.
Little Beast.
Yeah.
And I forget the name of it, but it's a red ale from Stormbreaker.
Ooh, I love me some Stormbreaker. Big fan.
That's my favorite red.
Fan. Yeah, good stuff.
It's such a good red. I don't usually like reds, and I tried this one on a whim, and I thought, ooh, I need to get this again, and I keep getting it because it's so good.
And Greg, I didn't ask what you were drinking. Do you have a beverage there for this fine happy hour situation?
I do. I just mixed up a beautiful Manhattan for my wife, who is currently trying to get to the furthest room possible in our house right now. And I'm drinking a beer from a brewery in Santa Cruz called Discretion, and it's their Redwood Blonde.
Ooh, fantastic! I think we're all bringing the local beers. I'm proud of us for not
representing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, I think that I would drag my lovely partner Kimberly in this, but I don't know what she would say about it. Hold on, let me unmute her. Let's see what's going on. Hey, Kimberly, you there?
Yes.
Of course she is.
I have to push the button.
See, last time she had it on really, really loud and off of headphones in the other room, and that's why we got there you go. Hello.
Hi, Kimberly.
How are you guys?
Great.
I love your backdrop.
I think that's you, Guthrie.
Yeah, it's you, Guthrie. Yeah.
Not to me.
Yes, the best that Google Images could afford.
Kimberly, I know that you are more of a bike commuter than a bike traveler, but I'm curious. Well, what are you drinking right now? Maybe we should start with that.
Kombucha, of course. Bubbly Rose.
Yes, I bought all 6 of the Bubbly Rose kombuchas in a West Virginia grocery store. Yes, people, in the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, you can get fancy kombucha. I'm just here
You too can have Bubbly Rose.
Yes. What's your kind of relationship with planning and bicycling? I mean, you do it more as a commuter, but I'm curious what's sort of what's your mindset on all this?
Really? It's just if I need to get someplace quicker.
Okay,
I hop on my bike.
Good talk. Okay.
Wow.
Well, thank you for joining, Kimberly. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I put you on the spot there. So
Speaking of planning, I've been mulling around some ideas today, and it's kind of like an opposite direction of what I was thinking, because I've always been kind of a one bike person, but I think I might be getting like closer to the fence on being a 2-bike person. And I was talking to a good friend of mine just before the show, who's he's stuck in Barrow, Alaska right now during the shutdown type stuff. So he was talking about getting a fat bike and just saying how different it is from his day to day. And he was the same fellow who I did my bike tour in 2013 down to San Diego with. So in our catching up, something that I was thinking of in terms of planning is planning a way to reduce the amount of activation energy it takes for me to go from a Portland city mindset to a hills and mountains mindset. And something that hadn't quite occurred to me before was in my effort to like hold off from the gravel bike trend and the bike packing trend, I feel like it's no longer a trend. It's more just to like, this is happening. It's a thing. So like now that that market has more fully matured, I was kind of mulling around the thought of like, oh, instead of just like worrying about the Surly not being the perfect Swiss Army knife to every situation that life throws at me, what if I really did get the Surly in more of a commuter zone, nod to Kimberly and the commuters out there in the world. And then I had a gravel bike that was just already prepped. Like it's got the saddlebag, it's got the pump, it's got the filter, it's got everything you need. And instead of me having to like empty out my panniers with a laptop and like all my like PDX commuting clothes and stuff like that, if I had a bike that I can just pick up and go, that would actually probably translate to me getting out into the woods quite a bit more often. And maybe that's worth that peace of mind. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth becoming a 2-bike person.
And then you're N+1, and that's just how it goes.
Once you break the seal, Guthrie.
Yeah.
Starts with one. It starts with one more, and then it ends with one more.
They've told me that since I got my first bike when I was 4 years old, but so far I've enjoyed being the exception to the rule. That's not to say I can't change my opinion.
I too am sort of thinking about another bike, and that would be my 4th bike.
Nice.
But in fairness to me, one of them lives on the West Coast, and just 2 live here on the East Coast. But Guthrie, I'm the same way. I'm really intrigued with the concept of getting either a fat bike or something that can handle like outdoorsiness a little bit more than just my my touring bike, which can do just great, and it can handle trails and stuff like that. But under adverse conditions, the C&O can be really, really gnarly and nasty. And I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool to have a bike where I don't have to give a rat's tail what's going on the C&O? I can ride on it. So yeah, I'm in your boat too. I'm sort of toying with it. And then you get into the thing. It's like, well, maybe I get an inexpensive one to start. And then you're like, no, inexpensive bikes are inexpensive for a reason. And then you may as well spend the money on a better bike. And yeah,
inexpensive bikes are just expensive later.
There you go. Oh, wow. I'm throwing that on a sticker. And right after the Salem, it's not so bad. What was that again?
Yeah. What? An inexpensive bike is just more expensive later, or something along those lines.
I think we should make t-shirts. That should be the SprocketShift Project Happy Hour t-shirt right there.
What I want is I want more trailer. I want a way to carry a number of things, because I'm a musician and I've always wanted, I guess now I live out of town where my band rehearses, so it's not likely that I'm going to be bicycling my bass to practice anytime soon, but I'm curious kind of what it would take to get a trailer together that could carry my bass and my amp and keep it dry in the rain and be able to cart it from one place to another without having to use my car. And reminds me of Blind Pilot, which band out of Portland, and they did famously. Yeah, they're one of the great Sprocket podcast gets that I would love to someday get. But they might also be long past that and tired of talking about it too. But they did a bicycle tour starting in Bellingham, Washington, I want to say, unless it was Vancouver, Canada. And they biked down the West Coast and they hit a bunch of all the big cities, between. And did gigs where they actually carried an upright bass and a bunch of other stuff. Greg, what is the most instrument you've ever carried by bike? Or did I ask the wrong question?
I would have to say cymbal bag, maybe a snare drum, but probably just cymbal bag.
Cymbals are heavy. They're made of metal.
But not to take a detour, for all the drummers out there, sharing drum kits as I've aged, I've really grown to love sharing drum kits. Someone allows you to then bike with just a cymbal bag. Still heavy. I've also learned to appreciate less cymbals. So, yeah.
Greg and Brock as our resident live musicians, I'm curious what you think about live music now. Ben Gibbard just did his kind of live online performance. Is that sort of, I'm kind of drawn to that. I'm grateful that musicians are doing that kind of a thing. I'm curious, is that sort of where your headspace is now for all of this? But P.S. We're below 6 minutes left before we get kicked off in the funny way that we did last time.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, well, I would say I think there's something to be said for getting music shared. I attended a virtual concert on Sunday, and it was amazing. It was super cool. I threw the folks $10, which is probably more than they would have gotten from me if it had been live, honestly. But there's also no kind of substitute for live music. I do know that for with people not being able to go out as much and not be able to do, musicians are canceling tours, that sort of thing, you do want to throw money at the people that you like, and buy stuff that maybe if you got some extra money you wouldn't usually buy. Greg, any thoughts?
Yeah, my musician friends that are real musicians, not just high school teachers with a hobby, they're struggling pretty hard trying to do some online concerts, which I bet are fun, and kind of like this is fun. But yeah, to buy some merch or an album or anything like that, I'm sure they'd appreciate. All their tours are obviously canceled. So
I don't have your board to do the call to action thing, Sprocket Podcast folks, but I think we have our call to action. Support your independent artist and go buy some merch.
Just
and buy
sorry.
something from their website, because that's the most direct way that you can support them. I actually have a band in mind. I've been into Charlie Bliss, although they've done well for themselves, but they still are kind of young upstarts. So maybe I'll go buy some merch off of them, because I like them. Folks, we've got about 4 minutes left. I think maybe we can do some closing thoughts here. Let's see, Aaron. Let me see who's all the way on my left on my screen. Well, me. Okay. How about you, Aaron? You're next.
Sure.
4 minutes left, folks.
On the subject of hauling, I cannot praise Surly's trailers enough. I got to try one some time ago. It was their shorter one. I can't remember. That's the TED, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
It rides so smooth, though. So I could imagine that the longer one, would be just as great. I haven't carried any instruments by bike, but I certainly am a fan of throwing the Bob trailer on my long haul trucker and just loading it up with groceries, couches, whatever I can fit on there. Yeah. So I would imagine amps and a guitar would maybe have more logistical issues. I wouldn't want mine to fall off a trailer, but as far as hauling, I think it would be just as easy as, like, say, a love seat.
I love my faux Bob trailer that I bought off of Amazon for $70, and is it just sort of falls apart a little bit at a time. It's pretty awesome. Hey, Guthrie,
More expensive later.
We are exactly expensive later. 2 minutes and 44 seconds. Guthrie Straw.
Yes. In regards to traveling and hauling things, I have taken a wooden tenor ukulele, or no, tenor ukulele, traveling in the past, and I came across a different plastic version of ukulele, which
That's a cool
is
design.
great. I can just chuck this anywhere on the bike, literally, and it will stay dry because it's made of plastic. So these are actually pretty good quality. They're made by a company called Bugs Gear, and the gent that sold it to me said he uses them as a paddle when he's going boarding when he's in Hawaii. He spends like half his time in Portland and half his time out on the Big Island, and he says they're great. So yeah, I'm very excited to put that. Yeah, it's true. This one I've actually played about 7 brands of the plastic ones. This one actually sounds like a ukulele. It's pretty nice, which is not to be said for most of those that you can find out there. So for what it's worth, I literally chose this instrument back in 2012 because I could fit it on a bicycle. So I went the other way around that, which is, what's the smallest thing I can play that will fit on a bike?
I don't know what I like more, the fact that you called him a gent, or the fact that can be used as a paddle. That's amazing. Brock did us less than a minute. Take it away, sir.
Man, it keep on going outside as long as they'll let you. I know if you're in Italy, France, or Spain, you can't bicycle right now. It's against the law, and they have probably pretty good reasons for that. But go outside and work hard, haul something. everybody's getting into hauling groceries home, so you might as well do that by bike, right? And yeah, don't overplan, but consider the possibilities. This is a great incubation period for whatever adventure you're going to have later on.
So agree. Hey, next episode of the Pedal Shift Project is a preview of my tour. Folks from the Sprocket, what's the next episode, preview of the next episode?
Cascadian Courier Collective. You guys did a fantastic episode on that one, and it's either out today or very soon.
Yeah, Ponce was great. Definitely rolled with a lot of the technological punches that were thrown at us.
And I think I added
Technological
those
punches is
out,
the name of my next band.
And speaking of music, Guthrie did a song on his uke, and he sent it to me by accident. You know what happens when people send me cool stuff? It goes on the show. So it's kind of like Aaron's rule. You have to pick up the phone.
Don't ever use that. Folks, everybody, I just want to say, I'm going to say good night to you all.